Good afternoon, welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, and my two guests this afternoon for the Tottenham pre-match are Supermac, Malcolm MacDonald and Liam Kennedy from the Shields Gazette. Hi lads, you okay?
Oh, pretty well, thanks Steve. How are you, Liam?
Really good. I'm honoured to be in such company.
Oh. What Steve, you mean?
He's talking about you, Malcolm, not me. Right, we must touch first and foremost on Jack Charlton, Malcolm, because what a man, what a player, and what a manager. And sadly, after a battle against illness, we lost him at the weekend. So, just your memories and your tribute to Jack Charlton.
Well, the first time I met him was on the St James football pitch, and it was back in 1971, and I distinctly remember that because he was 15 years older than me, so I was like the cheeky 21-year-old, and he was the mature and experienced 36-year-old, and we were stood on the halfway line with Leeds having a corner at the Gallagate end, and I used to just sort of walk around a bit in situations like that, and I walked behind Jack, and I just noticed that there was a couple of veins sort of showing on the back of his legs, and so I said, "You've got a lovely map of Britain on there, Jack." And he just turned around, he says, "You cheeky young pup," and started chasing me. and everybody was completely bemused because the action should have been in the penalty area. And of course it wasn't. It was in the centre circle where everybody was sort of going, "Oh, go on, Jack, go on, get it," and what have you. It was quite funny. But and I jump ahead now to the last couple of years. He and his wife Pat and my wife and I, we've been meeting up fairly regular for lunch at Charlton's in Camus, and it was a sort of Friday treat for us all, just to get together. Albeit Jack was suffering with dementia, so he knew me, but he couldn't place who I was and where it was from, and so I spent a lot of these times with him staring quizzically at me, and I could see his mind was overworking, in fact, trying to work out where he had seen me before. And well, I understand that some people they know instantly, and others it's a bit of a problem. And I was a bit of a problem to him. I think I was more of a problem in Charlton's in Camus than I ever was on the pitch. Bless him. And he's got the most lovely lady who has looked after him so with such care these last 2 or 3, 4 years, and she's had to have a lot of patience with him. So I know she loves her bowling on greens, and so perhaps she'll find the time to get back to that once more.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I've got some great stories about him, and just nice to take him down to Dunstan, Football Club. A couple of years ago, he came down to support the Pav Cup, and he sat in the clubhouse. Pat was with him, and he came down to watch an England game. And unfortunately, because of his illness, he wasn't going to be able to do a talk-in, which is originally what we'd hoped to book him for.
Yeah.
It was just great for him to be there. He posed for photographs. He signed every autograph, and it was lovely to have him there. And the football club, were delighted to have a World Cup legend there. So yeah, our thoughts are with the family. Liam, obviously, you know, it's always sad when we lose legends. Obviously, the World Cup '66 team are, I think there's 5 left now of that, you know, team who brought the World Cup home that only time. But there's been some fantastic tributes, you know, from all corners of the world, including Ireland, of course, which he did so well with. We've got to remember as well, though, he was at Newcastle and he was a Newcastle United manager. And I've had a few of the ex-players on who remember him fondly. Martin Thomas, Kevin Carr, you know, I'd been sharing memories about him. But yeah, I mean, you know, it was amazing, wasn't he? Amazing character.
Just one of the real sort of iconic figures of years gone by, really, because of that World Cup win. Obviously, his managerial game, he managed Ireland at a really difficult time in that country as well. There's been a lot of words said about that. He really lifted a nation when he took them to the World Cup with real character, and he seems to have been a manager that players really bought into. Never really lost sight. He obviously never played for Newcastle United, but he never lost sight of where he was from, and he was a real sort of elder statesman of the region, really. So it's a shame. Like you say, we keep losing these kind of iconic figures in the game, but yeah, it's nice to see so many nice words said about somebody, and somebody who meant a lot to a lot of people in the game.
Yeah, I think the best story I heard was Martin Thomas's, and he said Jack Charlton arrived first day of training up at Benwell, and he basically stood and watched with Willie McFall and Colin Suggett, and watching the lads train for about 20 minutes, and then he said, Willie says, get the lads in. He says the lads came in, and he went, which one's the best player, Willie? And he goes, Peter Beardsley, and he goes, wrong answer. He said, God's your best player. And he's looking up. He says, give the ball to him. And so the long ball game at Newcastle was born. Peter Beardsley wasn't used as much. And we brought in the likes of George Riley and Tony Cunningham. So, yeah, great memories, great stories. And I've heard some fabulous ones from Mick McCarthy and people like that, you know, and Joe Allen tells a great one. I think you probably heard it many times. You probably both have on the after dinner circuit, where he used to call Liam Brady, Ian Brady, stuff like that.
Yeah, after the murderer.
Fantastic memories. But yeah, God bless him, and our thoughts and respect to the family. Obviously, we're going to look ahead to tonight's game a little bit later on. But as always, there's a takeover aspect to the show, the dreaded T word, as we've started to call it on NUFC Matters. And yesterday was just the latest line of, stuff coming out from different parties. And been a big change. I will start with you on this one, Liam. Been a big change, obviously, in the TV side of things. The piracy seems to have been a big issue. And it seemed to be mixed messages to Newcastle fans on social media yesterday. You had some people who were ready to go and jump off Marsden Rock. You had other people who were, getting ready to crack the cans open because they saw yesterday as positive news. I read your article in the Shields Gazette, and it I thought you got a good grasp of it. Can you explain to people watching, what your thoughts were about yesterday's move by Saudi?
It was an interesting move. It was a surprise move in a lot of ways. But one thing I will say before I briefly go into the wheres and wherefores of that update is that I don't know whether the Premier League will pass this. I don't know whether they won't. I have my own feelings on it. But nobody outside of that very, very close circle around the Premier League really knows what their thinking is on this and where it'll go. But the update yesterday, to me, can be taken one of two ways. There was, like you said, there was a lot of people saw it as a really negative thing, that this was the end of any takeover talk, because we'd all been focusing very much on the idea that the people of Saudi Arabia, whose investment fund, their sovereign wealth fund, will be buying one of the 20 stakeholders in the Premier League. People of that country could not legally view Premier League football because the update yesterday was that Bein Sports was terminated altogether from showing in Saudi Arabia. Now, I know people in Saudi professionally, and also I've got a family members over there who work in the petrochemical industry, and they said they've got Bein boxes, you've been able to buy it constantly. It's not a case that it hasn't been available. There is a real thirst for Premier League football in Saudi Arabia, as there are with many other countries in the Middle East. But the big problem, or was perceived as a problem by many yesterday, was that the Saudi government decided to block any transmission of Bein. Now, it could be taken one of two ways. One way that has been explained to me by people from the kingdom is that this is very much similar to a ploy that was taken with regards the Asian equivalent of the Champions League, which is currently held by a Saudi country, I believe. Obviously, that was transmitted exclusively. The rights were exclusively held by Bein Sports, and they're not anymore. In 2019, those rights were revoked in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Now, it was on the idea that the Saudis don't want a Qatari TV company where they've got a long-held diplomatic dispute dating back to 2017. They don't want a Qatari television station having primary rights in their country, and that goes with the Premier League as well, because obviously, as we know, Bein Sports hold the sole right in the MENA region, which is the Middle East and North Africa. That's something that there is a hope in Saudi circles that could be moved around. They could literally bypass Bein Sports. Now, there are controversies with that. Will the Premier League buy this? Will they not? Will they go for that idea? We really don't 100% know. But my article yesterday was essentially explaining those facts, saying that there is a precedent for this kind of action from the Saudis. There is also it has worked for them previously. It's not a case of they've tried it and it hasn't. And I think essentially the Saudis don't want Bein to hold the rights within their country. They don't see them as legally holding those rights, and they want their own company to do that. And essentially, it'll probably, most likely, should this go through, it will be the Saudi telecom company who have sponsorship connections with Manchester United at the moment. So it's not something that the Premier League are against, because those kind of connections already exist. Now, I would expect those kind of connections may well have to be loosened. But again, that's just the kind of legal wranglings that are going on at present. And why this process essentially has been one of the most complex that the Premier League's ever had to deal with in any shape or form, never mind just on the takeover front.
Yeah, it's been an incredible 15 weeks, I think it is now, and to be honest, it is draining. It's mentally draining for people, because we've all been on lockdown. You're still working from home. I'm still working from home. We're really still in the middle of this pandemic, though, and all of us, doesn't matter whether it's fans, journalists, people who do podcasts like myself, it doesn't matter who it is. We're all wanting this deal to go through, but we're all literally sitting by phones, computers, waiting for the ticker tape to go along certain TV networks and just say the Newcastle takeover's done. But unfortunately, it's ended up in this position where we're all literally, our heads are done in. And I mean, yesterday, I got inundated with people asking. I know Neil Mitchell and, Steve Hasty, to a degree, all got the same on social media. What's going on? I still constantly get asked the question, is this going ahead? You know what I mean? And I'm always give the same answer. Yes, because I am positive. I do feel it's going to go through. And, yes, I've got a slight advantage because I've met Amanda Staveley and I know what she's all about. And I believe in Amanda Staveley. And I just think that there's so many positives have happened over the last 15 weeks, and all of that points towards, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia making big efforts to get their ducks in a line, the house in order, to get this takeover done. And, I would be very surprised if there hasn't been some kind of communication between the Premier League and the potential new owners, because, it does appear that things are getting done. Do I know that's the case? No, I don't. But I do feel that it's got that kind of feel. And it's, media as well. I think social media and the media are responsible for the fluctuation in people's attitudes. I think, we are very positive. Me and Neil Mitchell and Steve Hasty are probably the positive beacons in this. George Colgan, as a journalist, has been, I think you've written some really balanced pieces. I've seen, other journalists who I won't name who've gone off on a tangent, who have been constantly negative, who, have literally, shunned the idea of a takeover. And of course, our friends, like Richard Keys, for example, have come out and stirred the pot for whatever reason they do. But I think there's been a slow decrease in those people who've been having a go nationally. I think they've almost gone back under their stones, and almost back into a hole in the ground. And I thought what Richard Keys put out this week, and has to be said, badly written, unspell-checked blog. I thought, yeah, look, I mean, we all make mistakes. None of us are perfect, but I thought to spell Guardian Gradian was ridiculous. But yeah, look, I just thought what Richard Keys said was of great interest. And I'm always in two minds with Richard Keys, though, because I think, well, he knows that Newcastle fans will read into that something positive, and it gets him more traction. So I don't know what you thought of what Richard Keys said.
I think to me, given that he's been so vocal throughout this process and so negative because he's got obviously that agenda, he's intrinsically linked to Bein Sports. He is effectively with Andy Gray, their front man for the football coverage. I think for him to say what he said earlier this week was a little sign as to what is going on behind the scenes from the Qatari side. To me, it looked very much like a little bit of a white flag going up with regard to this. And I think there's been a slow turning from that respect. Like you said, over the last few weeks, there's almost been like an acceptance that this deal will go through. Obviously, there are doubts. Like I said, that you can take the news from yesterday one of two ways. The Saudis have remained positive throughout this, people I speak to. I know that the buyers outside of that remain very positive that this will go through. They can't give any idea on what the timescale may be, but they are confident that they've done everything that is required for this deal to go through. I, like you and like the people you have on here, I do share that positivity. And I also share the positivity that I do believe, and I have believed for some time, that we are in the death throes of Mike Ashley's reign at Newcastle United, because even if somehow this deal did not get passed and there had to be another from somebody else, now I'm not talking Henry Morris, of course, if it had to be somebody else, then I do believe Mike Ashley is a willing seller now. I've always doubted that over the years, whether he really did want to sell Newcastle United, but I believe that the pandemic, the pressures coming at him from his business empire. Now remember, his business empire is his baby. That's what made him what he is, and that's what ultimately he'll want to protect. And I think Newcastle United is now, in this current environment and climate, become more of an inconvenience than it ever has been. Essentially, he's allowed the football club to just tick along and run itself. He's only ever had to dip into his own pocket when obviously the people that he's trusted to run that football club, which from the very start have been ill-advised, really poor appointments. If he'd probably picked better appointments at the start, then it probably wouldn't have had 2 relegations on his card, and things probably would have ticked along a lot better, and we might not be talking in the same way about Mike Ashley. But it is what it is, and I think genuinely, I think it's his worst nightmare now would potentially be having to dip his hand in his pocket again, with all the uncertainty that surrounds Premier League football. Now, I know we're getting to a little bit of normality. We're actually seeing football on a pitch, but we're not seeing fans in the ground. We're certainly not seeing the same levels of people in shops to buy merchandise and things like that. And I do think there would come a point where he would potentially have to put a hand in a pocket and plug a few gaps. And I think that for him that has now become unthinkable. And that's why I genuinely believe that this is the end game. I still, like I said, I have the belief that we will have Saudi majority owners of Newcastle United, along with Amanda Staveley's PCP and Reuben Brothers. I know there are exciting plans already in place. There's an office with the Reuben Brothers who've been working primarily on the kind of developments that they're going to bring, not only to Newcastle United, but also to the city as well. And I think it's something that, for me, there's been a lot of negativity, and a lot of it's come from the national press. A lot of it's come from social media. But to me, I care about Newcastle United, and I care about Newcastle as a city. I've always lived on the fringes. I've always lived in North Tyneside. I was brought up Newcastle United fan, and I care about this city, and I believe it's been an underfunded area for a long, long time. And the thought of some fresh money coming in and boosting the place that I love, the place we all love, really is an exciting prospect for me, despite some obvious concerns that a lot of people and myself in some ways have about potential new owners. I believe overriding, I can see past those negatives and see that this could be a real positive for Newcastle United and for Newcastle and North Tyneside, South Tyneside, everywhere, the whole surrounding area in the city. Genuinely believe it could be a positive.
Yeah, I would agree. We've lost Malcolm. We'll try and get him back. He's had technical difficulties all day. Sometimes struggles a little bit with Skype, but if we get him back, I will keep trying.
I think I might be back, Steve.
He's back. He's back. Malcolm, how are you? Show yourself.
Yeah, a few technical glitches.
We can hear you, but we can't see you, Malcolm. Well, that's fine. Malcolm, let's... obviously you might get the picture back. Let's just talk about the potential takeover, obviously, that's still dragging on. Liam and I have had our say. What's your view about, the recent discussions that have been taking place with regards to, Bein Sports and Saudi? Is that something which you feel is a negative or a positive?
It's so difficult to say. Just how are the Premier League reading all of this? They have allowed Saudi Arabians into this country, into football in this country. They can't now just start saying no more. There's a huge amount of trade going on between this country and Saudi Arabia, and I just don't see Westminster wanting to upset apple carts and what have you. And I'm sure that there'd be some pressure being applied on the footballing authorities. But overall, what is their reason for not allowing this to take place, this takeover, when they have allowed others beforehand? Sheffield United, just to name but one. And I cannot see how on earth they can actually say no.
Yeah, I make a really interesting point there on the government idea, is that Saudi Arabia are the primary ally of this country in the Middle East. They're a massive military superpower, and we're aligned with them. Of course, may not agree on everything, but we are intrinsically linked to Saudi Arabia. They're a primary trade partner in the Middle East too. And to think that the Premier League, which is probably one of Britain's most iconic, anyway, outward trade items around the world, given that it's watched by so many people, for the Premier League then to take a stance that the government of this country wouldn't take just doesn't quite ring true to me. And that also works on the idea that the Premier League has all of a sudden, as I mentioned the last time I was on here, grown a moral compass. There isn't a moral compass for the Premier League, or at least until this point, there hasn't been. The Premier League deals in one thing and one thing only, and that is money. And I do believe, which is where we come back onto the idea of piracy, that they're just trying to squeeze as much money as possible for their own member clubs. And I believe that they will squeeze a bit more money for the member clubs, and they're just a right to do so. But they have to remember that this can't be to the detriment of one of their member clubs. And Newcastle United at the moment is at a disadvantage to all other clubs in the Premier League because there is so much uncertainty and nobody knows whether they're going to be playing here next year. Even those with contracts don't know whether they'll be kept. The manager doesn't know that he's guaranteed to stay here. How does he make plans for the future? The club's scouting department has largely been furloughed and scaled back. It is really... it's quite a concerning thing going into a transfer window that opens in only a few days, really, and then ends in October, to know that Newcastle United at present don't know what level of player they'll be keeping, what level of player they'll be going for, whether that manager will still be here, and whether they have an owner that cares about a football club, which is what we're ultimately getting down to. Is we have an owner at present who does not care about Newcastle United. If he cared, if he cared very little before, he cares even less now. And we're looking at a group of Saudis and the whole consortium who want to bring positivity back to Newcastle United and Newcastle as an area, and I'm all for that.
Absolutely. And also the way that football, and I'm talking of the Premier League and even the EFL as well, because money always dribbles down, that they are stating, or they have stated, that they are looking to put in about £200 million a year for 3 years. That's £600 million to go into the transfer market. That's a huge amount of money, and I don't think the Premier League can say no to that, particularly at this time when it's all pay at the moment, and there's next to nothing coming in, and so they've got to look at the future financial prospects of the Premier League, and I cannot. It would be literally suicide to say no to this deal and all of this fresh money coming into the game.
Yeah. Well, let's hope it gets sorted sooner rather than later, and let's hope Richard Keys' latest brings on his website come true, and Friday is the day. We'll wait and see with bated breath.
Oh, is that what's been said?
Richard Keys wrote a blog which it tended to suggest that Friday would be a big day and that the deal had been done. So Richard Keys, I doubt he has an in with the Premier League, or I doubt he's been told before Mike Ashley or Amanda Staveley. I take everything he says with a pinch of salt, Malcolm. But yeah, that's what he alluded to on his badly written blog. Yeah.
A journalist has a badly written blog.
He spelled Guardian gradient for starters, and that was just the start of it. So yeah, he's I'm not an English teacher, Malcolm, but even I can spell Guardian properly. Miles
spelled Groniad.
I'll start with yesterday with the Shields Gazette that basically, as always, speaking of Steve Bruce press conference, and the interesting thing that came out yesterday, Malcolm, was the Matty Longstaff contract situation. Of course, rumbles on. Will he stay? Will he go? And the big debate, of course, among supporters on social media was why on earth, when Sean Longstaff isn't available, Isaac Hayden isn't available, is Matty Longstaff not playing? And instead, we're playing Fabian Shaw in midfield. Well, Bruce answered the question at the press conference yesterday. And to quote him, he said, "This debate that I'm not putting Matty Longstaff in the team because of his contract is not true. I picked a team I thought that could win." So,
well, didn't he get that seriously wrong? Because the whole weakness of the side seemed to centre on Shah and what was going on behind him. And whatever happened in that dressing room, the Newcastle dressing room, at half-time, heaven only knows, because they went in 1-0 up. Perhaps it could have been more. And they came...
Oh, he's gone again. Have you gone? Are you still there, Mal? He's gone. Well, Liam, we'll take that up with you. Matty Longstaff's obviously a bone of contention from a lot of supporters who want him to stay and play next season in a Newcastle shirt. Obviously, Miles, was at the press conference, the visual press conference with Steve Bruce, and that was his answer. What was your take on that situation?
I can't speak for Malcolm, but I think he was going to be very critical of the way that Steve Bruce is handling this. And to me, the thing that sticks out is that he talked about players being committed to the football club. Yes, in terms of a contract, he's not officially committed to the football club. And at present, it looks like he will leave. But Steve Bruce is black and white. So too is Matty Longstaff. And I don't for one second believe that Matty Longstaff, when he pulled on a black and white shirt, would not give 120%. I know he would. You just know he would. I get what he's saying about maybe his head's been slightly turned by the idea of leaving, but for me, I think it's incredible. I don't think you can have a conversation with a lad and say, I'm going to have crunch talks with you. I'm desperate for you to stay. Oh, but by the way, the next time we're playing, I'm going to play a centre-half and a lad who probably doesn't have a future. On players who are committed to the football club, I'd be very, very surprised if Nabil Bentaleb, Valentino Lazaro, DeAndre Yedlin, potentially even informed Dwight Gale and others will be at Newcastle United long term. And Steve Bruce, where this whole argument falls down, is actually giving those players game time. Now, I think it's quite clear from the reports that are coming out from America that DeAndre Yedlin is not committed to the football club and will leave. Nabil Bentaleb, I think surely Steve Bruce, we've all seen it, he's probably made a decision on him. I would hope it's probably a decision not to keep him, because on this evidence he's been very poor, but continues to play him and play him ahead of somebody like Matty Longstaff, who would still, even if he's already made that decision in his head that he's going to leave at the end of his contract, would still go out and give his all in black and white. And to be honest, even if he wasn't giving his all, and I'm not trying to be too controversial here, but he'd surely be better than Bentaleb or Fabian Schär, who Fabian Schär for me has been, it's been like night and day. He was the North East Football Writers Player of the Year. He was only given that in February. And that was because he was excellent. He was incredible in that back three. A real footballer, silky, lovely on the ball, can strike passes left, right and centre, score goals from all angles. Physically even, can defend. This season he's not looked anything like that. Nowhere near. Now I get that he's not quite suited to a 4 in English football. I get that. But still, when he's performed, he's looked disinterested and petulant at times. And to me, to then put him ahead of a young lad whose future, let's not forget, is not guaranteed to be elsewhere, but he hasn't quite committed, to play him and a player who really should not have a future at Newcastle United, whether he's a free transfer or not, and he won't be, he'll cost a small fee and a considerable wage to sign him, because he's on very, very good money at Schalke in Germany. To then look at somebody like that and say, I would rather sign him than a Matty Longstaff, even if it was about money, Matty Longstaff, and I 100% don't believe it is all about money. People say, just offer him the 30 grand, offer him it. Well, I don't necessarily think that is exactly what this is about. I think it's the idea that he isn't guaranteed games. No player is, but what you want is a guaranteed pathway. He wants to know he's in with a shout of getting games, and at present, the manager has proven that he isn't. He's already shut that door. So Steve Bruce has now said that, I haven't had the order from above not to play him because he hasn't signed his contract. So this is all on you, Steve, and you're not playing him out of your own choice. So I think he's making a big mistake. And I genuinely think the lad, I think he'll probably leave. But you never know. If he give him a run of games, when he'd been fit, he might have scored a couple of goals, played 4 or 5 games. And you never know, he might actually sign that contract on the back of it. This can work both ways. And Bruce has decided to take one route. It's not a route I agree with, and I know, judging by social media, it's not really a route that anybody agrees with. And I think the fact that Steve Bruce has had to address that publicly shows that the tide has turned in that sense, that people genuinely do not understand this. It's bizarre. It's bizarre behaviour. I don't want to be too critical of Steve Bruce because, like I say, he's got his good points, he's got his bad points. Every manager makes mistakes. We can go back to Rafa Benitez, and I've talked about this before, I don't want to compare, but there were certain players that Rafa Benitez didn't like that could have had a career at Newcastle. We all know the names, we've all seen some have went on to succeed, some haven't. But every manager's like that. Every manager makes these calls, they don't get them all right. And I genuinely, it's my belief, I don't know the ins and outs exactly, but it's my belief that Steve Bruce has probably got this one wrong on Matty Longstaff, and I think I would like to have seen him get more game time.
Yeah, you won't get any arguments from me on that. He hasn't played enough really, to say whether he's going to be a big success. To be fair, neither Sean. He's been in and out with injury, suspension. He's played more games than Matty, of course, but it's difficult to say whether Matty is going to be a success. But he's a Geordie lad. You would like to keep a hold of him because he is somebody who you would like to think can do well. And you're right about players as well. I think Isaac Hayden's a prime example. I mean, we were all thinking that Isaac Hayden wouldn't be in a black and white shirt this year, and it was all about wanting to go home, and for whatever personal reason that he had, and then lo and behold, he settles in, and he's been, when he's been in the team, he's been a good player this season for us. You know what I mean? He's been vital, and he is a miss when he's not there. But you're right, it's different fortunes for different people, and Shaw's obviously definitely struggled with the formation, and he was played in a different way under the former manager. He just hasn't quite fitted in, and I think it's bizarre. I just think it's bizarre by Bruce when you have a central midfield player. I've never understood this at any level of football. If you've got a central midfield player available, why would you play somebody out of position in that position in a game where you're thinking you're going to win? And it unbalances the team. The player probably won't be happy. The rest of the team won't be happy, and so it proved. After managing to secure survival in the Premier League, we're now in a position where Newcastle are now losing games. Losing. If we lose tonight, it's it's going to be a weekend of the season, a poor end of the season, and it's not good. And you'd think as well that the potential new owners will be sitting looking at all this as well. They'll certainly be keeping an eye on what is going on, and that's with players and with the head coach, which Steve Bruce is. They'll be seeing what he's like. They've seen what he's like when he's winning games. Now they're going to see what he's like when he's losing games. And I suppose that's the beauty of a takeover taken as long as this has. You would like to think the new owners will be having a good look. They may have already made their mind up.
I think realistically, any public noises that come out saying they haven't already made their mind up, I think they're watching the game the same as us, and they know the standing of the manager. And I didn't think, I'll go back to last summer, I'm very much like most people out there, I didn't believe that Steve Bruce had done enough to earn a job like Newcastle United. It was very much a step back into the old kind of Alan Pardew type appointment by Mike Ashley. And I think really, given the feeling, although fans have warmed to Bruce because he's quite a warm character, he has definitely got some positives. He wants his team to play football, doesn't always work. But I think an easy way to make a mark for any new owner would probably just to bring their own man in. And I think realistically, if you're going to spend a lot of money on something, you're probably going to want to have your own take on things. Although there's going to be a little bit of wanting to keep the status quo, not to rock things too much, given the truncated nature of the summer. We've talked about the transfer window, we've talked about the end of the season and the start of next. There isn't a lot of time to make the kind of changes that you'd want. And I do think there must be a certain level of frustration with potential new owners in some ways, because they probably thought this would be the ideal buffer. They would get a bit of time and space to implement more changes than being rushed if you'd bought it at the same time during a normal season. That isn't going to be the case now, because even if a decision is made on Friday, as Richard Keys might well want everyone to believe, if a decision was made, then realistically there isn't a lot of time to turn things around. And I think there must be a level of frustration, but I do think an easy win in a lot of ways, that's probably the wrong way to say it. I don't want to be critical. An easy way to make your own mark at a football club would be to change the manager. It's probably one of the easiest things that any new owner could do, because they're not going to be able to click their fingers and suddenly build a training ground. They're not going to be able to click their fingers and suddenly be able to add 7,000 or 8,000 onto the Gallagher or whatever, you know what I mean? So one of the easiest decisions for any new owner who's put a lot of money in and have got the right to make these decisions would be probably to look at Steve Bruce and say thanks, but no thanks.
Malcolm, let's get back to the Matty Longstaff situation. And obviously what Steve Bruce had said was that thought he would win the game with Shaw, but it's dragging on, this situation. Can you understand? You were a manager yourself once. Can you understand when you've got a fully fit central midfielder raring to go, young lad, Geordie, wanting to prove a point? Can you understand playing, Shaw in midfield?
No, not at all. I really don't understand it. It's always such a negative thing when you play players out of position. And particularly leaving somebody who is young, who is learning, but who has been doing really well, and you leave them on the sidelines, and they're looking at and they're looking out onto a centre half who's in their position. It's so demoralising for the young lad, and So why Steve is thinking this way, I really don't know. And whatever went on in the dressing room at half time against Watford, I can't imagine what it was that caused Newcastle to come out and be such an utter shambles. They were in complete disarray, whereas they had the game well under control in the first half, and they completely lost it. I just dread to think, because if Newcastle United come out tonight in any way like they were in that second half against Watford, they're going to get absolutely tanked. They're going to get caned tonight.
Yeah, cane being the operative word, Malcolm, when we're playing Tottenham, of course.
Well, I didn't mean it as a pun, but do take it as one.
Yeah, I mean, before we look ahead to the game tonight, another story Gazette covered was the one which was good news but tinged with a bit of bitterness, and that was the point that obviously we're looking hopefully to have fans return to St James's Park Lane, but they're talking about the Premier League are talking about potentially 40%, at the games. I mean, how on earth are you going to make that work? Not just at Newcastle, but at any football club. And how are the club expected to select which supporters go?
It's just an impossible question, that, isn't it, really? Because I've spoken about this on here before. I know lads who've not missed games since the 80s, home or away, and it's absolutely killing them inside not being able to be at these games. So then to be able to turn around and say, okay, we're going to let some in, but you're not coming in. It's just how could you do that to people? It's really an impossible decision. What I would say is that some fans is better than no fans, but it still won't be football as we know it, because football fans are the lifeblood of football, and we need them back in stadiums. But ultimately, we need them back when it's safe to do so. And I think we've all got to kind of be a little bit patient in some respects. I want nothing more than to be able to go back to St James's Park and it'd be bustling, feel that hum before the game, and then just when it gets going at St James's, there aren't many better places in the country really. But we're going to have to be patient to really get that back. Fingers crossed, everything seems to be going in the right direction, and we're getting there baby steps really. But the idea that there would have to be some kind of ballot for fans is a really difficult one, really difficult. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, Malcolm, what's your view on that? Would you rather it was all fans, or no fans?
There's no substitute for having a full stadium and the atmosphere that it creates. It brings the best out in footballers. So to be playing in an empty stadium, it's very much like a training practice match. And yeah, it might be a fresh opposition, but even so, when managing clubs, I would arrange the games behind closed doors. They are never quite the same as what you have on in a league match on a Saturday with a full house. It never is. The crowd are part of the game. They're not just an adornment around the stadium. They are very much a part of the game. They create the atmosphere. And footballers react to atmosphere. It must be very difficult for all of the players just to try to raise themselves to really do well. To raise themselves above the level that they will be at when training.
Malcolm, how would you found that? How would you found the idea of sort of playing behind closed doors?
Very difficult. It's never quite the same. In fact, it's a long way from being the same. Just that atmosphere of what happens between leaving the dressing room and walking down the tunnel it completely changes the mood of a player. You can prepare all you want in the dressing room, but as you go down the tunnel and the atmosphere starts to get louder and louder and hotter. There's all, because 50,000, their body heat's going out in the direction of the pitch, so it gets very, very hot and very noisy, and it all helps to lift players. And at the moment, players just haven't got anything that's lifting them, so it's not the real game that we're watching.
Yeah, 100%. It's not. And let's hope that that we'll continue in the same vein with the coronavirus, and we can get back to a full St James's Park sooner rather than later. Other news this week, of course, the transfer window deadline has been announced now, and we're going to be running from July the 27th until October the 5th. So no real change there, Liam. It's the same length of transfer window opening, just obviously at a different time of the year because of the delay in the season. Yeah,
it's the only real slight difference is that there's the overlap into the start of football, really, which is something that we didn't have last year. We closed up just before the start of the Premier League campaign. Can I see positives and negatives of that? I suppose yes, in some ways you can see positives. Effectively, that some clubs will get benefits from that because you can make a poor start of the season. Then all of a sudden you'll be able to also improve your squad, which is something you couldn't do previously. It's going to be a bit of a throwback to the old days in some senses in that respect. But yeah, I think the biggest thing to take from this whole thing is that Newcastle United are at a disadvantage to other clubs, as I mentioned earlier, that they can't make the kind of plans that other football clubs can. And Malcolm touched on it before, that obviously the Saudis coming in would be new money into the Premier League, and that kind of injection would just get the balls rolling. Everybody, a transfer here and there would sort of, that money would deflect around the Premier League, and it would probably do the same for world football as well. So that kind of investment cannot really be looked at and turned away in my eyes. But Newcastle United, as things stand, are at a massive disadvantage. They just don't know what the future holds, like us all, and they have to wait too. Because a manager, they'll go about signing players, but they'll not be of the standard that a new owner would want. And if this drags on too long, you're potentially going to get new owners who will not be able to make their mark at all on the football club if this deal stretches through to October, which would be a real shame for everybody, really, because I think the Premier League would be missing a trick, because they'd have a new narrative, they'd have new money, and Newcastle United fans would almost, it would be painful that if we're still sitting here late September into October, the Premier League's kicked off again and we still haven't got a decision, whether it be good or bad.
Yeah, Malcolm, it's true what Liam's saying. It's the reason that the takeover needs to go through sooner rather than later, before Newcastle United get left behind for next season.
Absolutely, yes. That I would. I'm just trying to envisage why the hold up with the Premier League, and all I can think is that they're devoting all of their attentions and efforts to making sure that the season gets finished, and that all of the games are played and the results are known and what have you, and then they'll turn their attention to other things. And I would imagine that the Newcastle United sale and purchase has got to be top of the of things to do list for the Premier League, and as far as I'm aware, Liam, it is only the Premier League that this has to go before. Once they sanction it, then it all happens.
Yeah, very much so. We're at the stage now where the deal is effectively 95% done. The deal itself is 100% done. It's waiting on the Premier League to say yes or no. If the Premier League say yes, then it is purely just a transfer of funds, which we know will probably take a few more days than, say, if I was sending you 50 quid, because of the sums involved in the changeover in currency as well. It has to be done through intermediary banks in Europe and then over to to say Mike Ashley's account. So it would if they give the green light, I would imagine at the very latest within 7 days of that green light, you would have a changeover of ownership at Newcastle United. So it could be quite a quick process. It's just a shame that we've all had to wait so long for the Premier League to come to a decision.
Sure, and it does need to be a very quick process because there are so many people who have to make decisions about themselves, about their own careers. Let's just take Matty Longstaff, for example. His contract will be up because he's got a short extension. Now, does he want to stay at Newcastle United if Mike Ashley remains the owner? And probably the answer is no. But would he like to stay at Newcastle United under the new potential ownership of the Saudis? And I think that yes, he would want to stay. And so contracts can't be decided, and I think that that if the current people there at Newcastle who are fully expecting to be out the door within a matter of days, weeks, who knows, that they are trying to sort this business out, they're not really going to be putting way too much effort into it, are they? And do they apply Mike Ashley rules in negotiating contracts, or do they put in Saudi rules, but without actually knowing what they are? It's an impossible situation for a football club to actually function, particularly at this desperately important time of year. You know, it's when the real business gets done with all the players and what have you, and so that you can determine what you're going to be come the next season. And the next season is going to come very, very quickly. So I would hope that the authorities get a shift on as quickly as they possibly can, and just let one of the Premier League members get on with its business like everybody else will be doing.
Fingers crossed for that. We'll watch that, of course, with interest. Right, we'll look ahead to tonight's game. Tottenham Hotspur, of course, are the visitors to St James's Park behind closed doors. And Jose Mourinho will be making his 8th attempt to win his first Premier League match at St James's Park as a manager. Of course, he's lost 4 and drawn the other 3. He has won League Cup games, of course, as a manager, but never a Premier League game. He probably feels he hasn't got, won't have a better chance of doing it tonight with Newcastle's current form. Injuries tonight, obviously they're queuing up outside Derek Wright's physio room. Jamal Lascelles, of course, still out. Andy Carroll, Isaac Hayden, Sean Longstaff and Kieran Clark. And all injured. Danny Rose is ineligible to play against his parent club, of course, Tottenham. There are also injury doubts over Almiron, St Maximin and Lejeune. Almiron and St Maximin were at Dorset Park on Monday, though, so potential good news there. Tottenham Hotspur have their own concerns. Eric Dyer, of course, is suspended. Dele Alli and Joan Foyt are both unavailable. And Dom Belly is unlikely to feature as well. So yeah, I mean, essentially we've got an interesting game tonight, guys. Liam, first of all, how do you see tonight going?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a difficult one. I don't think Tottenham are the team that they were under Pochettino. They're having real struggles under Jose Mourinho. He just hasn't seemed to be able to get the same song out of the players. He's just a totally different type of man, different type of manager. People say he's yesterday's man. There is a little bit of a sense of that at the very, very top level. But I still think he's a very good manager. He definitely has an affinity with Newcastle United. I always wondered years ago that the way he spoke about the football club, whether he'd end up managing here one day, because I kind of feel like that's in his on his bucket list, really. I think he wants to sort of honour the memory of Bobby Robson and play some and manage a team at Newcastle United. But he has this record where he's brought teams here, and we've always tended to have the upper hand. And it wouldn't surprise us tonight if Newcastle go and beat them 1-0, 2-1. Newcastle have been very shaky at the back. Let's be honest about this. They've looked like scoring more goals, but they've looked like conceding them at will, to be honest. I think of the back four, it would be hard to maybe pick a 5 out of 10 from the previous game, never mind a 6 or a 7. And I think with certain injuries, I like Jamal Lascelles in the sense that I think he's a good character and a good leader. I don't think he's a top Premier League defender, but I do think he makes a difference when he plays, because he mostly does the simple things reasonably well. He's strong, and his position tends to be okay. I think when you take him out the mix and bring somebody else in, it's a bit of a concern. And I do think Fernandes is a lesser player alongside another defender, rather than Jamal Lascelles. So that is an area that particularly concerns me. I don't think the fullback positions are right. I've never been Javier Mankio's biggest fan, but I think of all the defenders, he maybe did deserve a new contract. I'm not sure whether I would have given 3 years or beyond is another thing altogether. Danny Rose, I think I had big question marks about Danny Rose when he first came, whether he was still up for it. He's a very vocal character. His performances before lockdown were poor. It's been a mixed bag since lockdown, but I think there's been definite signs of improvement. But defensively, that's what is my biggest concern. In the forward areas, obviously, I think Dwight Gale, Malcolm will probably be able to speak on this a lot better than me, obviously, but he just gets in the right positions. And I've seen Alan Shearer talking about that goal that he scored at Watford, and he's right that any centre forward who continues to make those type of runs and follows the ball in, is brave enough to do that, will score a few goals out of that per season. You'll never ever see that from Joe Linton. It's almost the kind of instinct in the box that you just can't teach. So if Dwight Gale plays, Newcastle have got a chance, because he tends to operate in the right areas. He's not the greatest finisher at times. He misses as many chances as he scores. But I think when he plays, the team has got a little bit more balance, because although it hasn't got a big man to hold the ball up, he plays, he occupies defenders, and he gets behind defenders, makes clever runs and that kind of thing. So I think I'm going to sit on the fence. It'll probably end at 1s each tonight. That would probably be my guess, but because I don't think Tottenham are the Tottenham of old. But I think Newcastle have got enough issues in their team to think that they'll probably definitely concede tonight.
Malcolm, the last 2 Newcastle-Tottenham games at St James's Park have both ended in wins for the away team for Tottenham. Hudo, whose birthday it is today, hasn't been seen at all. Will he get a run out, or will it be the man who destroyed Tottenham at the start of the season? Our big pal, Big Joe. Will it be him who starts up front?
No, I hope. No, you've got to play Gale. You said Andy Carroll's out with injury again.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, surprise. Such a shame, because injuries ruining the final part of his career, and it's no help to Newcastle whatsoever. I would play anybody other than Joe Linton up front, because the guy doesn't have an effect. If you're going to play Dwight Gale, really he could do with a big man to play it off. But Joe Linton, who is 6'3", doesn't play like a big man. He doesn't win stuff in the air. He's not an aerial threat in any way. He doesn't look to get his body around it. I would imagine that so far this season he has finished on all fours more times than any other player in the Premier League.
Now that's a stat to look up.
Yeah, he just gets pushed over so easily, and it is that easy that he gets pushed over that I just wonder, is that what you prefer than actually getting in there and mixing it with a centre half? Maybe he should get a couple of cuts around his eyes, and just get the taste of blood and and that might just stir him on. But at the moment, I don't think he relishes a physical challenge, and I don't think that he enjoys his football playing in the way that he does. But then I would have to sit down with him and say, look, son, what position do you actually play? Because I'm still waiting to discover what that position is. He's not shown me anything at all that would make me feel that I would want to pick him in my team. Nothing at all.
Can I ask?
He might start in centre midfield tonight instead of Matty Longstaff. Go on, Liam.
That would be the ultimate insult to Matty Longstaff.
It wouldn't be a surprise, though, would it? I just wanted to ask Malcolm, obviously being a centre forward of some repute yourself, like, are there any redeeming features with Joe Linton? Is there anything you've seen in his game so far where you say, oh, actually, you know, that there is something there and maybe we can work with that? Or genuinely, do you forget the fee? Don't worry about what we paid for him. Is there anything there you could look and say, can we improve him in that sense? And can we get a tune out of him?
No. There is nothing. Liam, he scored 2 goals, yes?
Yeah.
If memory serves. And both goals have come from one particular aspect in his play, and that is that he had the ball outside of the box, played it off, turned, and then he sprinted. So while the ball then went further down a wing, and then it came into the box, he's now coming in at speed to meet it. And that's how both of his goals have come. Do you know that they are the only 2 sprints that he's had all season? That he has never got it outside the box, laid it off, turned and sprinted towards the goal. Just those 2 times. Each time he scored a goal from it. Now, if I, as a goal scorer, if I find that I can score a goal by doing something, I'm going to do it all the time. Yeah. He's done it twice in the whole of this season. And the guy, he hasn't got a mentality between his ears that could make him a goal-scoring centre-forward. Just hasn't got it. And
it's an idea of gambling, isn't it? You've just got to gamble sometimes, and he doesn't seem to have that in his locker. You see that with Dwight Gale the other day, but Joe Linton doesn't tend to do that.
Right. And I would love to ask the question. I would have loved to have been in your position in a press room after the game, particularly after the Watford game. Joe Linton was brought on in the second half. At the end of the game, I would have loved to have been in the press room and said to Steve Bruce, and what did you expect to get from Joe Linton? What was it you wanted him to do? Because the fella did nothing. Now, and he's done that over and over and over and over again. So my last question to Steve Bruce would be, why the hell do you bring him on in the first place? As a sub, or even to start the game in the side? Why do you put him out on the pitch? Because he is the most unachieving footballer I've seen in a black and white shirt.
God, and that's saying something. We've had some nightmares in that shirt. Malcolm, we'll run to the end of the programme. What's your prediction? Liam's gone for a 1-1 draw. I'm afraid I'm not as optimistic. I am going to go for Jose Mourinho's first win at St James's Park as a Premier League manager, and Spurs to do the treble in three seasons. So I'm going for a 2-1 win to Tottenham. Well,
Steve, much as I hate this, I'm going to join you.
Right.
I'm going to join you. I think that the win against Arsenal, albeit it came very late in the game, the winning goal, but nevertheless, they achieved it. And Arsenal have been playing well, but not really threatening. And I think that'll just be a boost for Tottenham in this game. Nothing's given Newcastle a boost at all, other than that that Dwight Gale might get a goal.
Yeah.
And so I can see Tottenham, if they witnessed the second half against Watford, I can see them coming, really chomping at the bit and going for broke. And I'll take Tottenham to win 3-1.
Okay, great stuff. Depressing, but I think that's the mood that we currently have around the situation. I think the lack of takeover and now the subsequent, the subsequent results now going against us. Steve Bruce getting a bit erratic in press conferences, wanting an answer. I think it's all starting to hit home now. So, yeah, we're safe, which is the main thing. We just need the takeover done. Lads, been an absolute pleasure. Malcolm, I'll have you back on the show after the game with Steve Hasty and Neil Mitchell. So look forward to that. Liam, been an absolute pleasure again. Thanks for coming on, mate. Look forward to getting you on again next week if you're up for it.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Liam.
Yeah, cheers. No, it's been good, lads. It's been good to chat about it, and I feel a bit more positive going into ninth, even though used to a negative. I'm thinking Big Joe's going to get that goal.
On that note, I'll stop recording. Thanks.
Right, cheers, lads.